best friends.
Casting friends for yourself. You're just.
I never cast dates for myself, but I do cast a little friend.
Right. Yeah. Next show, Britta. Next show. That's the focus.
Yeah, exactly.
Hi everyone, welcome back to Off to Broadway, the podcast where we deep dive into anything and everything musical theater. I'm Tara.
I'm Stefania.
And in today's episode, we have an exciting guest returning to the podcast. Her writing career started as a teenager in Stratford, Ontario, where she had her first full-length musical, Big Box Story, presented as a gala presentation when she was just 18 years old. Throughout her career, she has written Stupidhead with Catherine Cullen, Dr. Silver, A Celebration of Life with her sister Annika Johnson, Callie v. Kelly with Sarah Farb, and The Last Shipment also with her sister Annika.
The musical she's here to talk about today, she began writing in high school as a way to process her own personal grief. Life After began its journey at Toronto Fringe Festival in 2016, after productions with Yonge Street Theatrical in Toronto, which won 6 Dora Awards, the Old Globe in San Diego, the Goodman Theatre in Chicago. It has come home to Toronto in a stunning production at the Mirvish Theatre. Please welcome Britta Johnson to the podcast.
Welcome back!
Hi, thanks for having me back.
No, thank you. Thank you for coming back. It's kind of like full circle almost. We spoke about Life After, and now we finally get to see it in this beautiful production.
Mm-hmm. We were, I was like reading about all of the productions that it had yesterday, and to think that we talked to you in 2020 and your last iteration of this before this was like there was one of the Goodman, but we had talked to you just before a 2019 production had just happened. So to think that was 6 years ago, and here we are today after speaking to you 5 years ago. The show has had 2 more iterations, and here we are with this beautiful show at the CAA at Mirvish.
Tara's, my playbills at Tara's.
Yep. So we were obviously at opening night, which I feel like let's start there, and then we'll go back in time. But how was that night for you?
It was, it was incredible and overwhelming and completely out of body. Like, I don't think I ever saw myself opening a show at the Mirvish Theatre. There were so many people there. It was incredible. Like, I was sitting in this section with my family and so many of my friends, and this beautiful homecoming, and so many people in the community that raised me were there. And then also, was I like in my body or able to be present? No, I was so overwhelmed. I feel like it was one of the wildest nights I've ever had, but also incredibly cool. I was just sitting there being like, please try to remember this feeling, Britta. Like, write this into your memory so you don't forget what this feels like. I was also just in the full circle, like thinking back to like our opening at the Fringe, like before I even knew what the show was. And that girl very much still lives inside of me, and she's living in a constant state of disbelief, I would say.
I mean, definitely not the same thing, because obviously, like, you lived it. But I remember, Steph, when we talked about this coming to Toronto as part of the Off Mirvish season, and then we found out that it was going to be at the Big Theatre in Toronto, we were like, oh my God, the Big Theatre. Like, not the little CAA, the big CAA.
not even the Royal Alex, you know? This is the big house.
Yeah.
We're just in the orchestra, but still, it's the most idiots I've ever invited into one of my pieces before. I will say the double CAA has confused a lot of audience members. I think we've received a lot of latecomers who end up at Cat Club the musical, but I think that's of my dreams, so I don't care. Yeah.
Can you give us a synopsis for people who are not familiar of Life After, just before we kind of jump into more of the history?
Totally. So Life After takes place kind of in the mind of a 16-year-old girl. You kind of live with her in the first-person narrative, and she has a very wild imagination in the immediate aftermath of her kind of semi-famous father's sudden death. And she feels culpable in this death because they had this argument the morning that he died. He was still in town when he wasn't supposed to be. So it's kind of like a bit of a mystery unfolding as she tries to unpack how it happened, when, of course, you know, there's no solution to grief. She runs into that. And it's really just this kind of first person kind of textured narrative swirling. We move through time and space very quickly about grieving and about growing up and about being a part of a family. And I always like to say it's surprisingly funny, so nobody gets scared away.
It is really funny. It's very funny.
Yeah. I think,
but also we left the theater sobbing, so that's also there too.
We like to do a bit of both in Life After.
That's the ideal theater experience for me, honestly. Crying and laughing at the same time.
I go to the theater to cry, so that's always, you could really feel that in my work.
Yes. last time we had you on, we talked kind of about almost extensively about the song Poetry, which is obviously in this show. We've been fans of that song for years, and I understand that it's kind of like what blossomed this entire show. Can you talk to us a bit about like how that song led us to here?
Totally. I mean, I wrote it even before I knew that what I was going to write was a musical. It's one of the very first songs I wrote for the show. So in that, it's kind of one of the very first songs I ever wrote. So, and it's kind of one of the few songs, everything has been written and rewritten a million times in this show because that's just what it is to make a musical. But this one has always stayed exactly the same. And I think there's a beauty in that. We all have always just tried to write a show that kind of earns poetry. And I wrote it, you know, I was on the tail of, I had some pretty life-changing losses in my high school experience. And it was right after the second one. And I was just sitting at the piano trying to figure out what to say about it. And I didn't think I'd ever show anyone. And then this kind of whole experience has grown out of it. It's the kind of the greatest gift I ever gave myself was writing that song, and it's grown up with me and been sung by some of the best singers I've ever met in my life. So yeah, it's there's my answer about poetry.
It's perfect because, you know, the character of Alice who sings it is a 16-year-old girl, and you really feel like the 16-year-old girl who wrote it, and that's why it feels like so authentic, I think, to the audience, and those emotions, that those were your real emotions at that time.
Yeah, I think it's been, especially in the many iterations of this show, always the guiding light is how do we maintain that piece of truth that people have responded to from the beginning. And I think it feels truthful because it came from such an authentic, truthful place. So as my craftsmanship has grown, how do I still preserve teenage Britta at the core of this? Because she's asking the same questions as Alice, and that's kind of where the authentic story lives, you know?
Did it always fall towards the end of the musical? Did it always like live in that place, or did you play around having it somewhere else?
It was always the final song, always, always, always. But interestingly, like there's another big song called Wallpaper in the show that is another one that's kind of been there from the very, very beginning. It's one of the first songs I wrote. And there was this hideous draft of the show Fringe where that was like the third song. And we did this read through where I was like, oh my God, that's the wrong place for that song. So it's kind of this kind of like ephemeral thing about song placement where then when we figured out that should kind of start the final chapter of the show was unlocked and suddenly it made sense. And I don't know what lunatic version of me ever thought it should go anywhere else, but it did live somewhere else for a time. Yes.
Can you tell us a bit about that Fringe production? Like, what are the key pieces that are still there and what kind of has gotten thrown out over the past 10 years?
It's interesting because like the beats that she walks through have always been the same, that we started a funeral, she has this interaction with this person, this interaction, like it's always the kind of pillars have remained the same, but the manner of the storytelling has really changed. So there's a lot of songs that ended up on the cutting room floor after Fringe. Specifically the character of the best friend changed a lot from Fringe to the next production. So her whole track changed, but like, I feel like everyone who's kind of grown up with this piece with me recognizes those pieces. Like poetry's always been there. Wallpaper's always been there. Did I Grow has always been there. We always begin at this kind of heightened, humorous funeral kind of dreamscape where there's a lot of kind of conflicting voices. But as far as like just the manner of storytelling or the way that I do it, the biggest change that has happened since the Fringe is we've introduced these three characters that we call the Furies. Tell me, like, which didn't exist in Fringe, and they are like kind of Alice's co-star of the show because they represent her grief and they're the shapeshifters that fill out her world. So in bringing them into focus, it allows her to kind of be more active in her grief, and that's kind of changed the game of many of the songs. But yeah, those big pillar songs that people know from this show, which for me
have always been there.
The four at the end where it goes like Wallpaper, Did I Grow, Snow, Poetry, they've always been there, always.
Wow.
And been changed, honestly, very little.
Wow.
So you knew how you wanted it to end, but like the journey to get there has been what's been evolving.
Yeah, it's kind of like, how do we earn this high level of catharsis that we do? And we kind of turn into the final act of the show, and it just it really comes at you. So how do we set it up so an audience is ready for that and welcoming of that and understands these characters enough to let them all kind of explode the way that they do in this kind of sweet towards the end, and that's always been the challenge.
So kind of to go back to like these first productions of Life After. So you have this song, you have this story, you start to create all of these things to make this musical. Once this idea becomes more of a reality, how do you pitch this?
How do I pitch the musical?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to.
You're like, I'm still pitching the musical.
I'm pitching it to the city of Toronto right now, baby. So at the beginning of the journey of this show, I really thought it would be a song cycle that all kind of took place at the same funeral, and we'd hear from many different points of views. It's about one singular loss. But I think there's a certain challenge that comes with a song cycle as far as like crafting the journey of it and the catharsis of it. And I think as I started to jump into it, the invitation was to really give it some kind of framework or forward momentum so that we can really run into the big cathartic moments at the end in a way that feels like effortless and not like we're kind of doing the same beat too many times. So at the beginning, I kind of, pitched it as a song cycle about a young person going through grief. And then it very much became a musical. But the only time I've actually had to pitch it was at my application for the Fringe Festival. I applied for this award where you got a spot in the Fringe, and I was still very much, I think only 4 songs existed. I think those 4 songs that have remained the same. And I was like, trust me, I'm going to write the rest of it. Here's what I'm thinking. And luckily that jury just chose to trust me, and that kind of changed my life. And since then, the show's kind of done its pitching for, I feel like people come to it and they're
the word of mouth.
And then word of mouth has kind of done the work for us, which is pretty amazing.
Well, it's so funny because we had heard about it. We were not, we'll have to say, we were like big box theater people before we started this podcast. We were like, oh, we'll only see a Mirvish show. We were not branching out the way that we should have been. I think we told you this 5 years ago that we were like, we haven't seen these productions, but we're being better now. So now that we're better. But I remember we interviewed Robert Marcus a couple years ago. And after the interview ended, he said to us, have you guys seen the filmed version of Life After? I think this was during COVID. And we said, no. He's like, it is one of the most beautiful filmed theater pieces that I've seen ever. And I think that kind of made us fall in love with Life After, research it, try to find all of these things. And then when we found out that it was coming here, it was like, oh my God, finally we have the chance to see this.
Giving more credit to Robert Marcus, when he did his up close and musical at Stratford, he sang poetry.
And we were obsessed.
We illegally ripped it from YouTube.
Yeah.
His rendition of that song is so beautiful. I was so honored when he asked to sing it.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I've been really lucky that I think from the beginning of the story of the show, the people who find it and love it have loved it a lot and and have done most of our PR work for us. I do think there's this secret sauce in this show where those who have had transformative loss kind of really feel the truth in it. I think that's the highest compliment I've ever received. And I think it's those people who have felt seen by this show who kind of are responsible for it having a life, because there's no reason why a boutique piece of musical theater by a no-name about teen grief should have any success at all, to be honest. But we found it.
Excuse me, Britta, you're not a no-name, not anymore.
I certainly was when I started the show.
I've seen the Toronto Star.
Right now, I'm getting a lot of good PR, and I appreciate this. Yeah.
When we talk about this amazing cast you have for this specific production, when the cast was announced, we were like, oh, everyone's been on our podcast already, so we're already huge fans. We had Jake was our very first ever guest, Jake Epstein. We had Shalina on. We had Julia on last year when she was in 6. We had you on. We're like, oh, this is Off the Broadway's musical.
Off the Broadway the musical, yeah.
And so can we talk a little bit about putting this cast together? It's a beautiful mix of Canadian talent plus American talent, kind of a discovery of Isabella Esler as Alice. Can we talk about how we put together the family and kind of the pieces around them?
Absolutely. So myself and the producers always knew we wanted to have a huge representation of Canadian talent. We have such amazing talent here, and it's such a rare gift that Canadian talent is given this house, of the Ed Mirvish. It's happened so rarely. So that was always a guiding light, but always casting the show begins with finding Alice, because we live in her world and we live with her family, and we want it to feel like an authentic family. So we always begin with quite a fulsome search for Alice, and it's not easy to find. It's such a big thing, and it requires someone who feels both like authentically young and really wise and vulnerable and, you know, able to drive this wild piece where the music can kind of go quite crazy. So every time we've cast it, we see many Alices, and then usually we find like one or maybe two who it's like, yeah, I could give them the keys to this car. And I remember when Bella came in, it was kind of otherworldly. Like she's unbelievable. So it felt really like a no-brainer. And from there, we were really lucky to build an authentic family around her. And then, yeah, so many of the Canadians in the cast are people who I have worked with and loved forever, like some of the kindest, most genuinely talented people I've ever met, many of whom, you know, Kaylee Harwood, who's one of the Furies, was in the Fringe production. She was the first person to play Kate, the sister. So that feels very full circle. Yeah, I don't know if I'm answering the question. It always starts with Alice, but then we were really lucky. Like, it's just so many of my very favorite artists in the entire country are in this cast. And I think the Americans that have joined us are, you know, otherworldly. And they all also happen to be some of the most like genuinely kind and humble people I've ever met. Like, the process has been just true paradise. Like, some of the happiest moments of my life. It's felt very effortless in the collaboration, and I owe so much to this team. Truly, they're amazing. Yeah.
We were talking about the other day after seeing it at opening that this is a big score. There's some big belty numbers. So, you know, watching Isabella go through this entire journey and then having like song after song after song, and she's crying, and then we land with poetry, and it's just like, this is a lot for someone who's, what is she, 21 years old to carry on her shoulders? Yeah. So it's really amazing to see such a young woman lead this, which then leads me to my next point of, this is almost a 100% female cast, which is so exciting. And I don't know the last time that we've seen something like that on a big stage. Can you tell us a little bit about why that was so important to you to have females at the forefront of this?
Yeah, I mean, the truth is, it's not like I didn't set out to say, hey, I want to write a show that's mostly women. It just felt like the truth of the story, that what we're really seeing is a story about the birth of a new family dynamic, which is inherently a matriarchy because the father figure is gone. And then to build Alice's world, like, I grew up with only sisters. It was mostly women who inhabited my world. So when I try to even figure out what the otherworldly voices are that are going to inhabit that, or the people who she feels most, you know, genuine connection with to walk through this with, like, it felt very clear that it was mostly women, and that this is a women's world that she's living in, that it's a new matriarchy that's being developed through the process of this piece, and that we have this kind of mirror of these three members of the family mirrored by the three Furies, and then filling it out with her teacher and best friend. So I mean, always a guiding light for me as a composer is I want to write good songs for women that aren't just about like loving a boy. I think the canon needs more of them. I want complicated women who get things wrong. I want women who go through like the full spectrum of the human experience, because I just think it's something that the art form has mostly afforded to male characters traditionally. And we have so many incredible female performers, but it's not like when I started writing this, I didn't even know that what I was doing was creating a primarily female cast. It just kind of happened quite organically, because that was the story that was being told, and that's the world that Alice is living in this moment.
A happy accident that we appreciate.
And like, there's so many cool opportunities for like the richness of the harmony writing I've gotten to crack open with alongside Lynn Schenkel, who's the orchestrator and arranger, like with this many treble voices. Like, it's a really cool texture I think we found, and I've loved writing it, and it feels like really authentically, I think, what her world would sound like. So yeah, it's been, and it's such a gift to myself that every time we work on it, most of the cast is like women my age. It's amazing. I always like, it's such a sisterhood. I'm like, my best friend
casting friends for yourself. You're just
I never cast dates for myself, but I do cast a little friend.
Right, yeah. Next show, Britta. Next show. That's
exactly.
Yeah, that was something that struck me as well, thinking back to Kelly vs. Kelly, which we saw, I think, 2 years ago now. Just like female relationships, like the mother-daughter relationship, and also the relationship between, oh my God, I can't remember the main character's name, but between her and her friends. And I know Tara's been like talking about the harmonies between like the Furies and also like the friends in Kelly vs. Kelly. It's like almost like a through line of these like female relationships, or these, you know, your thoughts represented by, let's say, like a 3-part harmony behind you.
Mm-hmm.
Every time we see that your name is attached to a show, I'm like, you know what? This is going to have a 3-part female hauntingly beautiful harmony, and I cannot wait to hear it. And you delivered once again.
Listen, I grew up, I have 2 older sisters. The 3 of us harmonized with each other near constantly. And so it's like always, even when I was just like a music student writing whatever I wanted, it always ended up being dense 3-part lady harmony. It's where I'm most comfortable. It's where I thrive. It's where my emotional landscape lives. And I'm not going to stop. So
no, it's so the Furies, I feel specifically in this production, it almost has like not like a sinister undertone, but it is haunting because the story is about grief. But yeah, some of their moments that they sing, it's just like, oh, that's got Britta Johnson written all over it. And I love it.
They're tormentors. And also, like, I have to give credit to Lynn Schenkel, our arranger orchestrator, because she, like, I always send her my first pitch for a vocal arrangement, and then she'll usually be like, what if we twist this knife just a little bit further? And that's really where the genius lives. So it's a true collaboration, and she's responsible for some of that sound of, like, when they say wow, when there's that crunch. Like, she taught me how to do that. She's what taught me.
I literally wrote down in my notes on my phone, like, crunchy 3-part harmony. So perfect.
We bless those 3. We have them singing like a semitone apart.
Their voices also are insane. The 3 of them.
The blend
it's so good.
Wild. A miracle. Yeah. I want to have them sing the whole, like, my entire songbook, to be honest. I love the way they sound together. Yeah.
We're kind of getting to maybe that chunk of 4 songs near the end, starting with Wallpaper. The moment that I think made both of us really lose it at that point is the moment after Wallpaper, when the sisters and their mom are just like painting in silence the room. And I wanted to kind of talk about, like, is that something that survived from Fringe? Was kind of that moment living in silence for kind of a long time for the audience to kind of sit with that something? When did we come to that decision? Because my thoughts was, it's so confident of you as a writer, as a storyteller, to trust the audience to kind of be with our characters for kind of a long time without having anything like super crazy happening on stage, to just let us live in that emotion. So can you talk to us about that scene and, like, how you came up with that idea?
Yeah, so we developed that in the room for Fringe.
Wow.
I'm trying to remember how it came about. Like, it was such a collaborative moment between myself and Robert McQueen, who's a genius, who directed the Fringe production and that cast. But I've always, for as long as I've been a composer, like, held true that I think, like, silence is such a powerful storyteller, and it's one that I try to employ a little bit, especially because I write pretty dense stuff. Like, I don't usually give the audience time to even think or clap or breathe. Just shoot out the cannon, which means that usually it's a very useful thing. Like, when you use silence for the first time you let that breath happen is such a powerful thing. It's such a powerful thing to introduce to a story. So as soon as we kind of moved Wallpaper to be later in the story, after that dreadful draft where I had it as the 3rd song, and I was like, this is bad. It needed to be followed by silence, because it's just like we've just been, the story keeps winding and winding faster and faster, and then we have this huge cathartic song. And so we knew it would be silence. Robert and I were talking about, like, I think we should see them paint. I think Alice should paint with her sister. I think we should see the 3 of them paint together. I think it's like a moment of seeing the birth of this new family unit that's going to take care of each other. And it was I think we improvised it the first time we did it. Robert stood at the side of the stage, and then he, like, whispered in. First of all, he was like, my sister played Alice in the first production. Amazing. It's like, Annika, I want to invite you to paint with your mom after this. Let's try that. Let's see how long. And then after about 30 seconds of that, he, like, went and whispered in Kaylee's ear, who played Kate, gave her a bag of groceries and was like, you come on now, you paint. It was all kind of always in the script, but we didn't quite know it was going to be choreographed. And then it just happened really organically in the room this one day. And then all of us were crying so hard. We were like, there it is. Like, in that room, it was, I've never seen more tears in a rehearsal room, but the moment that was unlocked. And then it stayed there ever since. It's always been scripted, but the execution happened through, I think, improvisation a little bit. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Because Well, I mean, the silence is one thing, but it's when you hear the like sobs happen from the stage. That's what really got us. And I had to dig through my purse to find my bags.
That's the silence is the sobs, unlike sobs in a space that big are pretty intense. But that was actually the having Kate have that moment was something that Annie and I cracked open through our last process at the Goodman, because it's kind of like it is Alice's story, but you want to create an arc for each of the characters around her. And it was kind of like, where do we leave Kate, who's kind of been so tightly wound and angry and kind of having a lot of trouble accessing that vulnerability. And it was Annie was like, I think she should be the one who cries in this scene. And then we did it.
Yeah.
It was like, there it is. Yeah, there it is.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite moment in the show?
Probably the painting. It's probably the painting. You know, I love the painting. Yeah, I also love the party sequence. I'm very proud of that when they go to the teen party at Kelly Lawson's house, and you know, that's some kind of like inside joke.
Julia Pullo is a star.
She's a comedic genius, but also like I'm proud of how it represents like those suburban parties in the suburban sprawl of southwestern Ontario. Those of us who grew up there know it, and I think well. So yeah,
yeah.
Mm-hmm. I'll say my hardest laugh was probably when Julia Pullo came out in the tap shoes and did her tap solo during the like convention, like faux convention. That was probably when I laughed the hardest.
It's such a funny thing. Like Annie and I decided we wanted her to tap dance in Chicago. I don't know, because it made us laugh. But like putting that into the script, it's not without muscle. Like we're having to be like, I got the tap solo in the show. Like,
you like have to, you really build up to it. Like
it's not like effortless. Like and we've that's one scene that I've always been working to kind of cut down a little. I'm like, well, we can't lose any lines about the tap dancing. So
good.
I think it pays off, though. I think it pays off.
Yes, definitely does. I want to go back to what you were saying about the Furies and the wow moment, because I would kind of consider that in the musical theater world like a motif that keeps coming back throughout the entire show. How do you choose when to deploy that so that the impact is as high as it is?
Yeah, I mean, I think it usually with motivic development, I find it presents itself to me quite organically. Like as far as like you kind of keep building your toolkit as a composer, and then you figure out how to craft it. But one thing we did for the first time in this production is planted the wow a little bit more meaningfully in Alice's first scene with her dad, where she like says wow, and he's like, wow, you sound so much like a teenager. So it becomes part of kind of the language of even their first conflict, which we see unpacked in that first scene, is about her kind of growing up and him not noticing. And the wow represents that. So then the wow is like this tormentor of like, it's this piece of the puzzle that was such a huge part of her last this interaction that she has so much regret about. But where do we use it? It's just like it kind of effortlessly becomes, there's so much to say wow about in a show about grief. And it became the motif actually, because I used to have this really, really shitty like electric keyboard in my room that had a jazz choir setting. And
I know what you're talking about.
If you hit the key with a flat finger, it goes, wow. And I used to say that all the time. And then one day I was stuck and I was like, what if that's the thing they're saying in the funeral?
I love that.
So, writing works in all kinds of ways. Thank you to Roland Keyboards for the
wow, the inspo.
For the inspo, yeah.
Okay, so this production is a larger production than this show has ever received before, and it almost feels like it's testing the waters for something even bigger. Can you give us a hint on the future of life after? Britta? Tell us like what you can say, let's say.
I think that there's a lot of like really smart people who work on this show who want to see it have as long and big a life as possible. So usually that means getting a commercial run in one of those big, city centers that launches musicals. I have no idea what's going to happen, but I know there's lots of people who believe in it and people who are working to make that happen. And I have no idea. It's like, it's kind of like I'm on the ride, and I know the people who love this show and the people who are captaining this ship believe in it even more than I have ever known how to believe in it for myself. Like the fact that we're at the Ed Mirvish is is bigger than I ever dreamed for it. So
with a 3-tier set, a 3-story set with
we have a Revolve, for God's sake. Like, this is good. But if it lives on, like if we make it to New York, my God, that would be incredible. And I know there's people who want that to happen, and I think there's so much out of our control about what gets to go and what doesn't. And I think we just keep our head down and do the best work we possibly can. And honestly, like a commercial run at the Ed Mirvish Theater, if someone told me that was happening when I was writing my dinky little Fringe draft, I'd be like, well, what are you smoking? That's so here we are.
Yeah. Before we wrap this up, what do you hope audiences take with them after seeing Life After?
I hope they feel seen and understood in this very lonely and complex thing that we all go through. We all grieve, and none of us know how to talk about it. And it's a kaleidoscopic and confusing, huge, devastating, funny, strange thing that we all walk through. And I just think there's this amazing thing that can sometimes happen in the theater when someone gets to the center of the truth or of something, and you go like, oh, I'm not alone. I'm not alone, and I'm in a room of people who also aren't alone, and that's a beautiful thing. So I think there's nothing lonelier than grief. And if it helps someone to feel a little less alone, then I think we've done our work. Yeah. I hope people feel we're telling them the truth, because we're working to tell them the truth, you know?
Yeah. And where can people follow you and the show?
Well, I'm on Instagram, Britta MC Johnson. And then the show has an Instagram account, Life After Musical, and a TikTok account, Life After Musical.
Yes.
Is run by Isabella Esler, the star of our show, meme queen. She's doing an amazing job.
I saw her making Jake Epstein Spider-Man through the backstage, and that is talent.
That is content. That is good content.
He's honestly nailing it. So I say everyone should go follow the TikTok. There's many delights to be found there. But yeah, I'm on Insta, the show's on Insta, and then the whole cast is as well. And they're all very funny, and the content's very good. So.
And Life After is on stage at the CAA Ed Mirvish Theater here in Toronto until May 10th. And thank you, Britta, for joining us again. It's so lovely to talk to you and actually get to talk a bit more about this show.
Thank you so much for having me and for advocating for this show.
Yeah, we have absolutely no power, but we will be hustling for Life After.
That's what I like to hear. That's what I like to hear.